Danielle Rivers had always dreamed of living in a quiet, beautiful neighborhood where she and her husband, Marcus, could start their family in peace. After years of saving and careful planning, that dream finally came true when they moved into a lovely home in a gated community in Georgia. The streets were lined with tall oak trees, the lawns were perfectly trimmed, and the atmosphere felt calm, almost too calm. Danielle was 6 months pregnant, and every little thing about her new home filled her heart with excitement. She spent her mornings arranging the baby's room, carefully folding tiny clothes into drawers and placing stuffed animals on the crib. Marcus often teased her for planning too much ahead, but deep down, he loved how much care she put into everything. "This is it, Danny," he said one morning, kissing her forehead before heading to work. "Our new beginning. Everything's going to be perfect." She smiled, believing him. She wanted to believe him. At first, life in the neighborhood seemed just as perfect as she had imagined. The neighbors waved politely when they saw her, and children rode their bicycles in the evenings without a care in the world. Danielle would take evening walks around the community, enjoying the fresh air and daydreaming about her future as a mother. But slowly, little things began to unsettle her. It started with small notices from the Homeowners Association, known simply as the HOA. At first, they were harmless reminders, letters about lawn maintenance or garbage schedules. But soon, Danielle noticed that most of the letters were directed specifically at her house. One morning, she found another envelope taped to her door. "Violation notice," it read in bold letters. According to the HOA, her Danielle woke the next morning began quietly. The sun rose gently over the neighborhood, filling the sky with soft golden light, but Danielle couldn't relax. After everything that had happened the night before, she still felt unsettled. She sat on the couch with a warm cup of tea in her hands, staring at the security tablet on the coffee table. The footage from last night kept replaying in her mind: Rick standing near their driveway, pacing nervously, and the agents calmly surrounding the area. Even though the FBI team had assured them they were safe for now, Danielle knew something wasn't over. Marcus walked into the living room, adjusting his smartwatch. He looked tired but more determined than ever. "Naomi just called," he said, sitting beside her. "She wants us ready for a follow-up visit today. The agents need to ask more questions and gather every single detail." Danielle nodded silently, holding her cup a little tighter. "Do they think this is bigger than we thought?" Marcus hesitated for a moment before answering. "Yes." Naomi said they're looking into the HOA itself. She thinks there might be more going on than just Rick's behavior. Danielle's heart skipped. "You mean, other people might be involved?" Marcus sighed softly. "That's what they're trying to find out." By late morning, Agent Harris arrived with 2 other agents. Danielle opened the door carefully, greeting them politely as they stepped inside. Their calm demeanor helped her relax a little. They sat at the dining table, reviewing all the letters, video clips, and Danielle's handwritten journal. Agent Harris asked detailed questions about every incident: when they first noticed the unusual behavior, how many times Rick had come near their property, and which HOA board members had been present during the strange walk-bys. Danielle explained everything carefully, her voice steady but quiet. She shared how the letters had begun as minor reminders but eventually became personal, even unsettling. She also described the recent security footage showing Rick talking to other HOA members while pointing at their home. The agents took notes, exchanging thoughtful glances as they pieced together the timeline. "Here's what we believe so far," Agent Harris finally said, placing his pen down. "Rick may have acted independently at first, but based on your recordings, we suspect some members of the HOA might have encouraged his behavior. We're investigating whether any policies were misused or if there's a deeper issue at play." Danielle leaned back in her chair, trying to process everything. "So, this wasn't just about our house?" "Possibly not," the agent replied calmly. "But don't worry. We'll find out." Before leaving, Agent Harris reassured them that there would now be regular surveillance patrols in the area and that their case had been prioritized for review. After the agents left, Marcus turned to Danielle and said softly, "We're not just protecting ourselves anymore. We might be uncovering something bigger." Danielle nodded, though her thoughts were already elsewhere: the baby, their safety, and whether their lives would ever return to normal. That evening, the quiet returned, but it didn't feel peaceful. Danielle kept checking the cameras every few minutes, unable to shake her growing anxiety. Marcus tried to distract her by suggesting they prepare a list of baby names, and for a little while, it worked. They laughed softly, debated their favorite names, and tried to focus on happier thoughts. But at 9:05 p.m., a new security alert flashed on Danielle's phone. She opened the live feed instantly. A small group of 3 HOA board members stood near the sidewalk, talking in low voices and pointing toward Danielle and Marcus's house. Rick was with them. Danielle froze. "Marcus, look." He leaned over, his jaw tightening as he watched the live footage. "They're back again." Without hesitation, Marcus forwarded the clip to Naomi, along with a short message, "It's happening again." Within minutes, Naomi called. "Stay inside," she said firmly. "We already have agents in the area. They'll handle this." Danielle gripped the edge of the couch, her chest tight as she watched the cameras. Outside, 2 dark SUVs quietly rolled down the street, stopping near the corner without drawing attention. Several plainclothes agents stepped out, calmly approaching the group. From the footage, Danielle could see the agents speaking to Rick and the board members. The conversation lasted a few minutes, and although there was no audio, their body language told a story. Rick looked tense, shifting uncomfortably, while the other members avoided eye contact entirely. Finally, the group dispersed. Rick walked quickly back to his vehicle and drove away. The board members returned to their homes without a word. Naomi called back immediately. "They're cooperating," she explained. "Rick's agreed to stay away from your property, and we've requested the HOA stop all direct communication with you for now. Our team will act as a buffer." Danielle exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Naomi." "Really?" But Naomi's voice carried a hint of caution. "Danielle, Marcus, listen to me, this isn't finished yet. We still need to confirm whether this was an isolated issue or part of a larger pattern. We'll stay on top of it." Over the next few days, life slowly began to settle. There were no unexpected visits, no letters, no unusual activity around the house. Danielle began sleeping better, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe again. Still, they kept their security cameras running 24/7, saving every recording just in case. One afternoon, Marcus got a call from Naomi. She sounded lighter, almost relieved. "We've completed the preliminary investigation," she said. "There's no ongoing threat to you or Danielle. However, we did find evidence of improper actions within the HOA." Danielle sat beside Marcus, listening carefully. Naomi continued, "The HOA board allowed Rick to act outside of his responsibilities. He went beyond his authority, and we're ensuring safeguards are put in place so this never happens again." Danielle felt tears welling in her eyes. Weeks of fear and uncertainty finally had an answer. "So it's over?" Marcus asked cautiously. "For you, yes," Naomi replied. "We'll monitor the situation for a little while longer, but you're safe now." Danielle whispered a soft thank you and leaned against Marcus's shoulder, finally feeling some peace return to her heart. In the following weeks, things gradually returned to normal. Danielle focused on preparing for the baby's arrival, attending doctor's appointments, and finalizing the nursery. The room was now painted a soft shade of yellow, decorated with tiny clothes, toys, and cheerful wall art. Marcus, too, seemed lighter, though he remained cautious. He kept the cameras running and checked the footage nightly out of habit, but most days were now quiet. A few neighbors even stopped by to express support, having heard bits and pieces about the situation. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor who had warned Danielle weeks earlier, visited with a homemade pie and a kind smile. "I'm glad everything's calming down," she said warmly. "I knew something wasn't right." Danielle hugged her, grateful for the small gesture of kindness. One evening, Naomi came to visit in person for the first time since the incident began. They sat together on the porch, sipping iced tea as the sunset painted the sky with shades of orange and pink. "You know," Naomi said softly, "you two handled this incredibly well. You stayed calm, documented everything, and trusted the process. That made all the difference." Danielle smiled faintly. "I don't think I've ever been this scared before, but having you there made us feel less alone." Naomi placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "That's what family is for. And now, you can focus on what really matters: your future, your baby, and your peace." Danielle nodded, taking a deep breath of the warm evening air. For the first time in months, she truly believed her life was returning to normal. A few weeks later, Danielle and Marcus welcomed their baby into the world, a healthy, beautiful little girl. The hospital room was filled with laughter, relief, and quiet tears of joy. Holding her newborn daughter in her arms, Danielle whispered softly, "You're safe now." "We're safe." Marcus stood beside her, smiling down at their baby, and for the first time in a long while, his expression was completely free of worry. Though their journey had been frightening and uncertain, they had made it through together. With the support of Naomi, the agents, and each other, Danielle and Marcus reclaimed the sense of safety and happiness they had once dreamed of. And as Danielle rocked her daughter gently to sleep, she finally felt it, a deep, lasting peace she thought she'd lost forever. Up earlier than usual the next morning. The sun was barely rising, casting a soft orange glow across the bedroom. She lay still for a moment, listening to the faint hum of birds outside, trying Danielle. Danielle woke up the next morning feeling exhausted. The night had been restless, filled with anxious thoughts and quiet tension. Even though nothing happened after Rick delivered the handwritten note, the silence outside felt heavier than ever before. Marcus was already awake, pacing in the living room when Danielle walked in. He was on the phone with Naomi, his voice low but urgent. "Yes, we got the letter last night," Marcus said firmly. "Yes, we've saved it. It's in the folder with the rest of the documents." Danielle sat on the couch, clutching a pillow as she listened to his side of the conversation. When Marcus finally ended the call, he sat beside her and took her hand. "Naomi's escalating this," he said softly. "She's spoken to her team, and they're contacting the local field office directly. She wants us to stay inside today unless absolutely necessary." Danielle nodded silently, her heart pounding. The hours passed slowly. The once peaceful neighborhood now felt different, almost unfamiliar. Every sound seemed amplified: the distant hum of lawnmowers, the chirping of birds, the soft whir of passing cars. Danielle found herself checking the security cameras more often than usual, scanning for anything unusual. Around noon, Marcus noticed something odd on the street camera feed. Rick's security vehicle was parked 2 houses down, but this time, he wasn't inside it. Danielle leaned closer to the tablet. "Where is he?" she whispered. Marcus zoomed in on the footage and spotted Rick standing near the corner, speaking to another man. They seemed to be in deep conversation, occasionally glancing toward Danielle and Marcus's house. Marcus frowned, his grip tightening on the tablet. "He's planning something. I can feel it." Danielle placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let's not jump to conclusions," she said softly, though she didn't fully believe her own words. A few minutes later, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Naomi: "Stay alert. My team is watching live through the cloud cameras. If anything unusual happens, we'll be on standby." Knowing the FBI was quietly monitoring the situation gave Danielle some comfort, but she still couldn't shake the unease. That afternoon, they decided to keep the curtains drawn and stay away from the windows. Danielle sat in the nursery, folding baby clothes to distract herself, while Marcus stayed in the living room monitoring the security feeds. Suddenly, at around 5:30 p.m., one of the cameras detected motion near the backyard gate. Marcus quickly opened the live feed and saw Rick walking slowly along the fence, holding a clipboard and writing something down. "Danny," Marcus called quietly, "he's at the back gate." Danielle hurried to the living room and stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. "Why is he back there?" she whispered. Marcus immediately saved the clip and forwarded it to Naomi. Within moments, his phone buzzed with her response, "We're deploying a local team to your area. Stay inside and do not engage." Danielle's heart raced. Things were moving faster now, and it was becoming clear that Naomi and her team believed the situation was serious. As the evening approached, the golden light outside slowly faded, and the neighborhood grew quiet. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Danielle sat beside Marcus on the couch, holding his hand tightly. At exactly 7:12 p.m., the doorbell camera detected movement again. Danielle opened the app and saw Rick standing near their driveway, looking around carefully. He appeared tense, his eyes scanning the street as though checking to see who was watching. Marcus whispered, "Why does he keep coming here?" Before Danielle could answer, her phone buzzed. It was Naomi calling. "Listen carefully," Naomi said firmly. "We have agents less than 5 minutes away. Do not open your doors. Do not go outside. Just stay calm." Danielle's pulse quickened. "What's happening?" "There's enough evidence now for us to intervene," Naomi explained. "Trust me, everything will be handled carefully." They stayed seated on the couch, the quiet hum of the air conditioner the only sound in the room. Danielle glanced at the security feed again. Rick was still near the driveway, pacing now, his shoulders tense. Moments later, flashing lights appeared faintly at the end of the street. A black SUV pulled up, followed by 2 unmarked cars. "They're here," Marcus whispered. From the window, Danielle could see 2 agents stepping out of the SUV, dressed in plain clothes but carrying clear authority in their presence. They moved swiftly, speaking quietly into earpieces as they surveyed the area. Another agent approached the front door, gently knocking once. Marcus checked through the peephole before opening it slightly, keeping the chain lock in place. "Mr. Rivers," the agent said calmly, showing his credentials. "I'm Agent Harris. We're here on behalf of Agent Naomi Green. You're safe inside. We'll handle this." Marcus nodded and thanked him. Danielle sat on the couch, watching the scene unfold from the camera feeds. The agents positioned themselves strategically, some near the driveway, others near the back of the house. Rick, realizing he wasn't alone anymore, stepped back cautiously. One of the agents approached him slowly, speaking in a calm, measured voice. Danielle couldn't hear what was being said, but she saw Rick's expression shift from surprise to hesitation. He nodded occasionally, glancing toward their house before finally stepping aside. After a few tense minutes, Agent Harris returned to the front door to update them. "We've spoken with him," he said carefully. "He claims he's been conducting routine checks for the HOA. However, based on the reports and your documentation, we've advised him to step away from your property immediately." Danielle let out a shaky breath of relief. "So, it's over." Agent Harris shook his head gently. "Not yet. But for tonight, you're safe. We'll keep monitoring the situation closely." Marcus thanked the agent again as he returned to his team. Danielle leaned against Marcus, trying to steady her breathing. For the next hour, they watched as the agents remained nearby, keeping an eye on the street and speaking quietly among themselves. Eventually, 2 of the unmarked cars drove away, leaving one vehicle stationed discreetly at the end of the block. Danielle finally felt a small sense of calm wash over her. Knowing there were professionals watching over them gave her comfort she hadn't felt in weeks. Later that night, Naomi called again to check on them. "You both did exactly what you needed to do," she reassured them. "From now on, you'll have increased patrols in your area, and we'll keep tracking any unusual activity." Danielle thanked her, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Naomi's voice softened. "You're not alone in this. We'll make sure you and your baby are safe." After the call, Marcus wrapped an arm around Danielle and whispered, "We're okay, Danny. It's going to be okay." For the first time in days, Danielle allowed herself to believe him. She rested her head on his shoulder, holding on to the thought that the worst might finally be behind them. But deep down, she couldn't shake one lingering feeling this wasn't over yet. Somewhere in her heart, Danielle sensed that the quiet night outside was only temporary. Because sometimes, when everything seems calm, the biggest storm hasn't even arrived. Woke up feeling unsettled the next morning. She had barely slept during the night. Every time she closed her eyes, she kept seeing the image from the security footage: Rick standing at the edge of their driveway, motionless, staring up at their house. The memory sent chills through her. She walked to the kitchen slowly, fixing herself a cup of tea to calm her nerves. The early sunlight spilled through the blinds, but even the soft morning glow didn't make her feel safe anymore. The neighborhood that once felt like a dream now carried a weight she couldn't shake. A few minutes later, Marcus joined her at the table, holding his phone. His face looked serious. "Naomi just called," he said, referring to his cousin at the FBI. Danielle set her cup down. "What did she say?" "She wants us to send her everything: the videos, the letters, even the security alerts. She's going to file a preliminary report." Danielle felt her shoulders relax slightly. "Do you think that means they're taking this seriously?" Marcus nodded. "Definitely. She said it's better to document everything early rather than wait for things to escalate." Danielle sighed, grateful that Naomi was involved. Having someone trustworthy keeping an eye on the situation gave her a small sense of security. By mid-morning, Marcus had compiled all the files into a single folder and emailed them to Naomi. Meanwhile, Danielle started organizing her notes: the journal she had been keeping since the first violation notices arrived. Every letter, every strange encounter, every unusual moment was carefully recorded. That afternoon, their lawyer, Mr. Patterson, called to confirm their appointment. "Bring everything," he instructed. "If there's a pattern, we'll find it." Danielle felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. Maybe they were finally taking the right steps. Later that evening, Marcus suggested they order takeout for dinner. Danielle agreed, not having the energy to cook. While they waited for the food to arrive, they sat together in the living room, talking softly. "You know what's strange?" Danielle said, pulling her knees up on the couch. "No one else in this neighborhood seems to have any issues with Rick. It's like he's only focused on us." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what bothers me. He has no reason to keep watching our house this closely." "Do you think the HOA asked him to?" she asked hesitantly. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. But I'll find out." Before Danielle could respond, her phone buzzed with a new security alert. Her heart skipped as she unlocked it, expecting to see Rick again. But this time, it wasn't him. The cameras showed two HOA board members walking up the street, stopping briefly in front of their house, whispering to each other, and then walking away. Danielle frowned. Why are they all suddenly so interested in us? Marcus leaned closer to look at the footage, his expression tightening. I don't like this. First Rick, now them. It feels like they're planning something. He immediately forwarded the clip to Naomi, adding a note, now it's more than just one person. Others are involved. Within minutes, Naomi replied, "Keep recording everything. Do not confront anyone. I'll handle this." Danielle appreciated Naomi's calm, professional tone, but her own nerves were far from steady. That night, they double-checked the locks, tested the security cameras, and kept their phones nearby in case anything happened. Danielle tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She thought about the baby, about their future, about how something that started with a simple letter had turned into constant anxiety. Around midnight, she heard Marcus quietly get out of bed and walk to the living room. She followed him, finding him sitting on the couch, staring at the live security feeds on his tablet. "Can't sleep," she whispered. He shook his head. "I keep thinking, what if this escalates?" Danielle sat beside him and placed a hand on his arm. "We'll get through this. We have Naomi. We have evidence. We're not alone." Marcus nodded, though his expression remained tense. The next morning, Marcus had an early video call with Naomi. Danielle sat beside him, listening quietly as Naomi explained her plan. "I've flagged this situation internally," Naomi said through the screen. "I've also spoken to a local field office. If there's any immediate concern, they'll respond quickly. For now, keep your daily routines as normal as possible. Do not engage with Rick or anyone from the HOA directly." Marcus agreed, though Danielle noticed he still looked restless after the call ended. Later that afternoon, Danielle decided to step outside for a short walk to clear her mind. The fresh air felt good, and for a few minutes, she managed to relax, enjoying the sound of birds chirping and leaves rustling in the wind. But halfway down the street, she noticed Rick's vehicle parked near the corner. He wasn't inside it this time. Instead, he stood a few feet away, talking to another man Danielle didn't recognize. The moment their eyes met, Rick stopped talking and turned away abruptly. Danielle didn't stay to watch. Her heart raced as she walked quickly back home, locking the door behind her. When she told Marcus what she saw, his jaw tightened. "I'm calling Naomi again," he said. This time, Naomi's tone was firmer than before. "Danielle, Marcus, listen to me carefully. Do not go anywhere alone, especially at night. Keep your cameras rolling at all times. I'll be sending you a direct line to a local federal contact. If anything unusual happens, call immediately." Danielle thanked her, feeling both reassured and unnerved. The fact that Naomi was taking this so seriously meant their instincts had been right all along. By evening, Danielle tried to distract herself by focusing on the nursery again. She carefully folded tiny blankets, arranged the baby shoes, and double-checked her hospital bag just in case. Focusing on the little details helped her breathe easier, even if only for a moment. But peace didn't last long. At 8:47 p.m., the doorbell camera detected motion. Danielle checked her phone and saw a figure walking up the driveway. It was Rick. "Marcus," she whispered urgently. Marcus came rushing in as Rick placed another envelope under their doormat and walked away. Marcus waited until Rick left the street before opening the door to retrieve the envelope. Inside was another letter, but this one was different from the others. It wasn't printed, it was handwritten. The message was brief but unsettling: "You've ignored enough warnings. Stop making this harder than it needs to be." Marcus stared at the paper, his jaw tightening. "That's it," he said quietly. "I'm not waiting anymore." He immediately called Naomi and read the note to her word for word. Her voice on the other end was calm but serious. "Stay inside," she instructed. "I'm alerting my team." For the first time since they moved into the neighborhood, Danielle realized just how quickly things were escalating. The rest of the night was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, almost unnatural. Danielle and Marcus stayed in the living room, checking the cameras every few minutes, waiting for Naomi's update. When her message finally came through, It was short and direct: "We've flagged this as a high priority situation. Keep your phones charged. Help is nearby if needed." Danielle set her phone down and leaned against Marcus, her heartbeat steady but fast. She didn't know exactly what was coming, but one thing was certain now: this wasn't just about HOA rules or letters anymore. Something bigger was unfolding, and it was only a matter of time before everything changed. To convince herself everything would be fine. But the letter from yesterday kept flashing in her mind, the one that warned them about serious consequences. It wasn't just the words that troubled her, it was the way they were delivered, slipped under the door instead of mailed like the others. That small detail made her uneasy, as though someone wanted to avoid leaving a trace. She turned to her side and watched Marcus sleeping peacefully. He had been up late last night, reviewing their security footage again and making notes for the lawyer they were planning to contact. His face looked tense even in rest, his jaw slightly clenched as if his mind hadn't stopped working. Danielle gently got out of bed and went to the kitchen to make tea. As she stirred the sugar into her cup, she looked out the window at the quiet street. The neighborhood looked perfectly calm: lawns freshly cut, sprinklers running, a few neighbors walking their dogs. Everything seemed normal, but inside, she felt a storm brewing. Around mid-morning, Marcus came into the kitchen, still half asleep. "Morning," he said softly, kissing her forehead. "Morning," she replied, handing him a cup of coffee. He took a long sip before sitting down at the table. "I called the lawyer first thing this morning," he said. "We have an appointment tomorrow afternoon. He wants us to bring all the letters and the video clips." Danielle nodded, feeling slightly relieved. "Good. Maybe he can make this stop." Marcus reached for her hand and squeezed it. "I promise, Danny, I won't let anything happen to you or the baby." She smiled faintly, appreciating his words, but deep down, her anxiety didn't fade. Something told her that things were far from over. Later that day, Danielle decided to visit her mother, who lived about 20 minutes away. Marcus had work calls scheduled, so she kissed him goodbye and drove off. The drive was peaceful, and spending a few hours with her mom helped calm her nerves. They talked about the baby, nursery plans, and Danielle's upcoming doctor's appointment. By the time she returned home that evening, the sun was beginning to set, and the street lights were slowly flickering on. She parked her car in the driveway and noticed Rick's security vehicle parked near the entrance of the neighborhood. He was sitting inside, looking down at something, possibly his phone. Danielle hesitated for a moment, debating whether to wave, but she decided against it. Instead, she walked straight into the house, locked the door, and checked the cameras out of habit. That's when she noticed something strange. The front door camera had recorded Rick walking past their house at least 3 times that afternoon, even when she wasn't home. He wasn't on patrol either, because his vehicle wasn't in the frame. He had been on foot, glancing toward the house each time. Danielle replayed the clips twice, unease growing with every second. She quickly sent the videos to Marcus, who was still on his work call upstairs. Within minutes, he came rushing down. "This isn't right," Marcus said, staring at the screen. "He has no reason to be this close to our property. I'm calling Naomi." Naomi, his cousin who worked for the FBI, picked up on the second ring. Marcus explained everything: the letters, the repeated drive-bys, and now the unusual surveillance footage. Naomi listened carefully and then said, "Save all your videos and keep documenting everything. If anything escalates, call me immediately. I'll put this on record." Danielle felt a small sense of relief knowing Naomi was aware, but her nerves were still unsettled. That evening, Marcus suggested they have dinner together to distract themselves. Danielle cooked her favorite dish, baked salmon with roasted vegetables, and for a while, things felt normal again. They laughed, talked about baby names, and even watched an episode of their favorite show. But the peace didn't last long. Around 9:15 p.m., Danielle heard a faint noise outside, almost like footsteps on gravel. At first, she thought it was a neighbor walking their dog, but the sound lingered longer than expected. Curious, she checked the security camera feed on her phone. Her heart skipped a beat. Rick was standing across the street, near a tree, looking directly at their house. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "come here." He rushed to her side and stared at the screen. "Why is he standing there?" he muttered under his breath. For the next few minutes, they watched Rick remain motionless, his gaze fixed on their home. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Danielle tried to calm herself, telling herself maybe he was just checking the area as part of his job. But Marcus wasn't convinced. "That's not routine," he said firmly. "He's watching us. There's no other explanation." They decided to stay alert and keep the doors locked for the rest of the night. The following morning, Marcus installed 2 additional cameras, one covering the backyard and another angled toward the street. Danielle called her mother and asked if she could come stay for a few days, just until things felt normal again, but Marcus reassured her they would handle it together. Still, Danielle couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. That afternoon, as she sat in the nursery folding tiny clothes, her phone buzzed with a notification from the security system. One of the cameras had detected movement near the driveway. She opened the live feed and froze. Rick's security vehicle was parked directly across from their house again, and this time, he wasn't alone. Another HOA board member, Mr. Leonard, stood beside him, pointing at their home and talking rapidly. Rick nodded several times, scribbling notes on a clipboard. Danielle quietly called Marcus, who came into the nursery immediately. Together, they watched the footage silently until the 2 men drove away. "This is escalating," Marcus said softly, almost to himself. "And I don't like where it's headed." That night, they prepared a complete folder with every letter, every recording, and every camera clip to bring to their lawyer the next day. Danielle packed the folder neatly into her handbag before bed, determined to resolve this once and for all. But she had no idea what was coming next. The following evening, Danielle left her mother's house a little later than usual. She texted Marcus to let him know she was on her way back. The sky was dark, and the street lights cast long shadows across the quiet road. As she turned into the neighborhood, she noticed Rick's vehicle parked unusually close to their house again. Her stomach tightened, but she told herself not to overthink it. She parked the car, grabbed her bag, and hurried toward the front door. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. Danielle spun around quickly, but there was no one there. The street was silent, the night still. Shaking off her nerves, she unlocked the door and stepped inside, locking it behind her. Just as she was about to head upstairs, her phone buzzed again with a security alert. She opened the app and what she saw made her blood run cold. The camera captured Rick standing at the edge of their driveway, staring up at the house. Danielle's breathing quickened. She called out for Marcus, who rushed down the stairs. By the time he checked the live feed, Rick was gone. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. The silence between them said everything. This wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. Something bigger was happening. And deep down, they both knew the quiet neighborhood they once dreamed of had changed forever. Front porch decorations were not in compliance with community standards. She frowned, confused. All she had done was place a small welcome sign and a flower pot outside her door. Marcus looked at the letter and sighed. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "Other houses have the same decorations." Danielle decided to attend the next HOA meeting to clarify the issue. That's where she first met Rick Collins, a retired police officer who now served as the community's security enforcer. Rick was in his late 50s, tall, with a stern expression that rarely softened. He carried himself with authority and had a habit of interrupting others whenever they spoke. During the meeting, Danielle raised her hand politely and explained that she didn't understand why her home was receiving so many notices. Before she could finish, Rick leaned forward and spoke in a clipped tone. "Rules are rules," he said, his voice flat. "If we let one person break them, soon everyone will." Danielle felt embarrassed as the other board members avoided her gaze. She nodded quietly, not wanting to cause trouble. But deep inside, she sensed something wasn't right. Over the following weeks, the notices kept coming, warnings about minor things like her mailbox needing fresh paint or her garden hose being visible from the street. Marcus grew increasingly frustrated. "This is ridiculous," he muttered one evening, tossing another letter onto the kitchen counter. "They're nitpicking every little thing. I think it's personal." Danielle tried to stay calm, telling herself it was just a misunderstanding. But soon, she began noticing other unsettling encounters with Rick. Whenever she walked around the neighborhood, she'd see him parked near the gate in his security vehicle, watching. If she waved, he never waved back. Once, while she was unloading groceries from her car, he approached her and reminded her again about the rules. His tone was firm but carried something unspoken, something that made her feel small and unwelcome. She shared her worries with Marcus, but he reassured her. "Don't stress yourself, Danny. You're pregnant. Focus on the baby, okay? I'll handle this." Marcus decided to file a formal complaint with the HOA, explaining that they felt unfairly targeted. He expected a professional response, maybe even an apology. Instead, he received a short email saying there was no evidence of discrimination and that Rick was simply enforcing community guidelines. That night, Danielle lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Something about Rick's behavior gnawed at her. She couldn't understand why he seemed so focused on their home. The other neighbors didn't seem to have these problems. As the weeks passed, the tension grew heavier. Danielle began keeping a journal, writing down every incident, every letter, every strange encounter, every unsettling look. Marcus suggested installing security cameras around the house for peace of mind. One evening, as Danielle sat on the porch sipping tea, their neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, walked by and stopped for a quick chat. Mrs. Henderson was an older woman who had lived in the community for nearly 2 decades. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Be careful around Rick," she whispered. "He takes his job very seriously, maybe too seriously." Danielle frowned. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Henderson hesitated, then shrugged. "Let's just say he likes to keep an eye on everyone. Some people don't mind it. Others, move away." The cryptic warning left Danielle uneasy. That night, she shared it with Marcus, who immediately grew concerned. "That's it," he said firmly. "I'm setting up cameras tomorrow. I don't care if the HOA likes it or not." The next day, Marcus installed 2 cameras, one facing the driveway and another covering the front door. Danielle felt a little safer knowing they had some extra protection. But that sense of security didn't last long. A few days later, Danielle noticed Rick driving past their house several times within the same hour. When she stepped outside to check the mail, his car slowed down in front of her driveway. He didn't stop, didn't speak, just stared before driving off. That night, Marcus pulled up the security footage and found several clips of Rick passing by their house repeatedly. "He's watching us," Marcus said, clenching his jaw. "I don't like this, Danny. I don't like it at all." Despite the growing tension, Danielle tried to focus on preparing for the baby. She spent her afternoons painting the nursery a soft shade of yellow, arranging tiny shoes on shelves, and daydreaming about holding her child for the first time. Those little moments of joy kept her grounded, even as her unease about Rick deepened. Still, no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was building beneath the surface, something bigger than simple HOA disputes or petty rules. Then came the letter that changed everything. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, neatly folded and slid under the door instead of mailed like the others. Danielle opened it, expecting another routine notice about her garden or decorations. But this one was different. The tone was sharp, the language stricter than before. The letter accused them of repeated violations and warned of serious consequences if they didn't comply. But what unsettled Danielle the most was the final line, "You've been warned enough times. This is your last chance to do the right thing." Her hands trembled as she read it again and again. Marcus took the letter from her and read it silently, his expression darkening. "This isn't a notice," he said slowly. "This is a threat." For the first time, Danielle felt a real sense of fear. The quiet neighborhood she had once loved now felt unfamiliar, almost hostile. Every sound outside made her heart race, every shadow on the street made her glance twice. Marcus decided to contact a lawyer and file a formal complaint against the HOA. He also reached out to a distant cousin, Naomi, who worked with the FBI. He didn't want to involve her yet, but he wanted her to be aware of what was happening just in case. That night, as Danielle lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. The once peaceful silence of the neighborhood now felt heavy, as though the air itself carried tension. Somewhere deep inside, she knew their troubles were only beginning.